You're very welcome back. Our football coverage here on Off the Ball is with thanks to AIB. They're the proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. You can check out the hashtag #TheToughest for more, particularly on this weekend where we've got two provincial football finals. Connacht and Munster on Sunday afternoon. You've got Sligo hoping to repeat the result of 2007 when they beat Galway in the Connacht decider, while Kerry go into the Munster final against Clare, where their record reads 11 wins and 1 defeat against the banner. The man who was in charge for Clare's famous win in 1992 was John Maughan, who is with us. We've got Neil Ewing as well. How are you getting on, lads?
Very well. And yourself?
Good. Cannot complain at all.
Good, Well, how you doing? Hello, Neil.
Hey, John. How are you?
John,
Good.
if I can take you down memory lane to start with the first one, 1992, I would think, with all of your achievements in management over the years, must be one of the sweetest days you had across your career.
I didn't fully appreciate at the time, Will, the magnitude of winning that Munster title, to quite honest with you. I got involved with Clare in 1990. I was 28 years of age at the time. I sat down with the Clare management or the executive with a view to taking on a coaching role, and I asked the obvious question, well, who's the manager? And they told me they didn't have any idea who that might be. So I left Gort's hotel, or Sullivan's Hotel in Gort on a midweek evening, go down to chat about being coach of the Clare team. I ended up coming home as manager or whatever that meant at the time. But it was an exciting time. Obviously, I did, as I say, beating Kerry, the aristocrats of Gaelic football. Jack O'Shea, his last game for Kerry. Seamus Moynihan, he made his debut on that occasion. But once we got involved with Clare and we got on a bit of a roll, Will, we won the All-Ireland B Championship in 1991. Ironically enough, I think the shit hit the fan for Clare. Clare, they had travelled up to play Sligo in a B Championship in 1990 around October time, from the best of memory. They had no manager, they had no coach, and I think they had just about 15 players. And they were beaten on that occasion, and things were pretty desperate. I suppose they must have been very desperate when they came knocking on my door. I was living in Galway City at the time. I was based in Custody Barnes and Athlone. And as I say, I got stuck into management, and we just, for some reason, we managed to get a little bit of organisation, got a number of players back that wouldn't play with the county, and got a bit of momentum going. Winning that B title in 1991 gave us a bit of a huge momentum going into the championship in 92, and we put off what was a great victory for Clare, and hard to believe it's 31 years ago, but unfortunately it is.
Yeah, been reading a bit, John, about your training methods when you went in as well. I mean, as you mentioned, you're 28. It's 3 years since your playing career has been brought to an end. You're working with the Army at the time. And it seemed maybe some of those principles from the Army training is what you brought in when you picked up that group of players.
Look, stories will be embellished with time, and I know some of the Clare players went on record suggesting that it was a bit of a torture camp. But I think when we played Kerry in the 1991 championship, we were toe-to-toe with them for about 55 minutes. And it was only in the last 15 or 20 minutes of the game, we just ran out of steam and couldn't sustain what we had done so brilliantly well for maybe 50 minutes of the game. So quite clearly it was a fitness issue. So we spent a bit of time on strengthening that aspect of our game, shall we say. I can't put it any more subtly than that. But we did some hard runs. It was of its time. Certainly now there'll be a little bit more science attached to it. There was no nutritional psychology involved. It was just basic hard work. And that was good enough back in its day. Certainly, it wouldn't wash in today's modern game with all the backroom expertise and all sorts of. In fact, the GPS wouldn't allow us to do the likes of some of the things we got away with back in those early days.
You say that maybe now you appreciate it more than you would have done 30 years ago. But when you think about it, the scale of the achievement, to have beaten one of the real aristocrats of Gaelic football, and for it to have been Clare's first win against Kerry in the championship since 1949. And also to be achieved in the context of, as you say, when you come into that team, it's B Championship, it's struggling to get a panel of players together. That is one hell of a remarkable achievement there.
It was, and I think it gave hope to a few other counties, including people would often suggest to me, and I'm certainly claiming that the football success enhanced their hurlers' prospect, but by chance or coincidence, they did go on to win an All-Ireland title in 1995, having laboured in the bottom half of championship seasons for quite a number of decades prior to that. But yes, I suppose it does. I don't think we get away with it now, and even though I'd love to see the likes of a Clare win a Munster title on Sunday, I just feel it may not happen. I don't think they're good enough to beat a current Kerry team, and that's what's happening. The big teams have got just a little bit better. Will they've moved on, and we've now. A lot of it's to do with finances. I'll be quite honest with you. And unfortunately, those that are in the second and third and fourth tier just cannot bridge the gap for whatever reason, whether it's geographical or urbanization, combination of factors. But back then, you could get away with it. Leitrim repeated in 1994, famously, winning their provincial title. But I just get the impression that the opportunities mightn't be as easy for the so-called minnows, if you want to call it, not being disrespectful in any way. And incidentally, with Neil here, I just marvel at what Sligo have been doing for the last couple of years. And just moving on to that very briefly, Will, the underage success has bubbled to the surface. A Hogan Cup final with Summerhill College, which I was really delighted. I was lucky enough to win a Hogan Cup myself, and I really respect and appreciate the magnitude of winning a Hogan Cup. But to get to a Hogan Cup final for Summerhill after so many years not doing so was brilliant. Turbo Curry have been coughing up underage talent, and the likes of Sligo have done a really, really brilliant job in nurturing the talent with great coaches and a lot of hard work. And unfortunately, not every county has positioned themselves to do that. But certainly in Sligo's case, it's beginning to, I suppose, surface now with their Division 4 success. And I saw them playing last year above in Croke Park against Cavan and Tarleton Cup. I thought they were absolutely brilliant. They have a lot of talent. And to see their underage, under 20s winning a successful Connacht title, it just gives an indication with really, really hard work and good investment in identifying the right guys to take the younger underage cohort of players to the next level. They're doing that brilliantly well. Clare have done it at senior level. I mean, what Colin Collins has achieved down there is quite remarkable. 7 years in Division 2, really boxing above the weight, you could say. Over the last number of years, I just begin to wonder and keep my fingers crossed that they go out and really put on a top-class performance on Sunday against Kerry, but I just think they might come up a little bit short.
Yeah, like Neil, when we look at this, I mean, obviously there's a romance of looking back to 92, but you look at how intimidating Kerry's record has been in recent times. Jack O'Connor goes into his 9th Munster final. He's won 5 of them across the period where he's been manager. They've only lost 1 Munster final in the last 2 decades. That was in 2008 against Cork. They lost the semi-final against Cork back in 2020. Other than that, we could be talking about a huge run of Kerry victories in a row here. Kerry have taken a real stranglehold over this province, and their championship record in the last 5 where they've played against Clare, they've won by an average of 12 points. So, in theory at least, this is a hell of a task for Clare to try and overturn the current All-Ireland champions.
Yeah, for sure. Well, when you say that out loud, it really highlights the pedestal that Kerry are on in Munster. I think John made a very important point there in terms of, maybe what was possible 20, 30 years ago and what's possible now. I think, maybe back in the 90s, maybe even the early 90s, some of the bigger counties weren't as organised as maybe they should have been. And, probably spearheaded by some of the counties in the north getting their act together, Tyrone, they got Club Tyrone up and running. That probably spurred the likes of a Kerry, the likes of a Dublin to, step back and go, okay, what are we doing here? We can't just rely on the natural advantages that we have in terms of our history, maybe our playing populations. So, you've had that with the bigger counties getting themselves organised. That's increased the gap. And I think on that note, you have to ask the question, what went on in Cork during that period of time that they weren't able to get themselves organised, or that they delayed getting themselves organised? And I think for me, and it's maybe something that I rabbit on about too much, but a big thing that's changed from around that, late 90s, early 2000s period is the league structure, where, we previously would have had divisions 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. So you didn't have that huge divide where at the minute we have divisions 1 to 4, and the counties in division 4, even the lower half of division 3, they're getting no exposure to playing those big counties. And I think what has happened is a lot of the smaller counties have got their act together in terms of strength and conditioning, and they're doing all the work that they need to do. But I think when you play outside your comfort zone, the skill levels are there, but they're just not tested, at that higher level. And if the counties got more exposure to playing at that higher level, there's a great opportunity there for them, which is why I'm absolutely delighted that Clare, after all their success over the last years, maintaining Division 2 status, they were kind of unlucky to come up against Kerry in Munster semi-finals, but now they're going to get the chance to play Kerry and go on and play, 3 top quality games after that. In terms of, Kerry facing into Sunday, it's, let's be honest about it, it's a huge, huge task for Clare. But I think Colin Collins, he's a defiant man. You see him interviewed, that defiance, it's bouncing out of him. So I'm really interested to see what sort of plan he has come up with to take on this Kerry team.
Yeah, I would think, Neil, when it comes to the plan, it has to be about shutting down space and trying to spoil. Because if they leave themselves open, this Kerry team have got so many good attackers, and we even saw with Clare last year where they pushed up a bit on Derry and Derry were able to expose spaces behind Clare. I would think shutting the bolt door and trying to make themselves very difficult to break down has to be priority number 1 for the Gaelic grounds on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that should be anyway taken as a slight. And I think, it's become very cliched in Gaelic football, in the last, quite a number of years to talk about defensive football. But, if you look at any field sport, the number 1 premise is to stop conceding goals or to prevent conceding goals and points. So, any team going out has to have that as their number 1 priority. And I think what's happened is a lot of teams have obviously realised, we need to be solid defensively. And they want to get up and support the play and attack. But, you can only do what your opponent will allow you on some of these occasions. So, I think Clare, common sense would suggest that they will set up to limit the space. The big thing I think Clare have in their favour is they have some serious ball winners around the middle of the field that maybe other counties don't have. And if you were to look at possible weaknesses in Kerry, it's maybe that midfield sector since David Moran has stepped away. And that's not to say it is a weakness. It's a possible weakness because, the weakness is definitely not in their forward line. You even look at some of their defenders, they have pace and aggression to burn there. So in terms of where they're not tested, it's that midfield area. And, I think that's where Clare were even able to turn the screw on Cork in the second half. They were able to win that primary possession further up the pitch. And that's maybe what happens sometimes for teams from lower divisions playing against, the so-called bigger teams, is that they struggle to win primary possession around the middle of the field. So that's somewhere Clare won't have an issue in, I feel.
John, what's been your assessment of Kerry so far? Because some of the soundings out of Kerry, myself and Neil were chatting a few weeks ago about the article which was put into the Irish Times about Darragh Shea, and he was saying that maybe the depth isn't quite there within the Kerry panel. They haven't replaced David Moran, so therefore the favourites tag should be shunted across to Galway or to Dublin for this season. What have you made of Kerry the first few months of the season, John?
Well, last Sunday created a small little bit of confusion because we saw an underperformance from Dublin. And having watched Dublin against Derry in the Division 2 final, I felt that Dublin were taking it nice and easy through the league phase. They just did it sufficiently well to win the league title, get an extra game, a league title, fine, and move on. But certainly Kerry exposed them the last week, and I'm only surmising here in the last couple of days, would Dublin be in the middle of a training load and trying to get their timing spot on with a view to pool games? Because I don't want to be disrespectful to Louth, but one would surmise that Dublin will have sufficient expertise and know-how and guide and experience to land an Ulster title Sunday week, and without overexerting themselves. So I think Dublin at this juncture, to me, despite last Sunday's performance, an underperformance, and I'm discrediting Kildare for the great job they did. To me, they're ranked number 1. Kerry number 2. Will we learn in the ranking for me? and that could change after Sunday, because I'm just interested to see where Kerry are at. They had an indifferent. I never saw such a shambolic performance from a Kerry team as they did against Mayo up in McHale Park a couple of months ago now, and they just looked in total disarray. And I think Jack O'Connor's philosophy and approach was year one, win everything, beat everyone out the gate, win league, win championship, and he succeeded in doing so. This year, I think it's a question of pull the reins, get our 6 points, survive in Division 1, which he has done, and let's get our timing and our appetite absolutely spot on, as it did so brilliantly well for decades in the 70s and 80s, hitting that All-Ireland semi-final and peaking at the right time. And I just surmise that Kerry are trying to achieve the very, very same this year, something similar to what Dublin are doing. Will we learn a lot? I hope just that Clare really put in a great performance. I know that they had hoped to maybe for a home or away toss, and Clare would go to Killarney, but it's gone to Limerick. And that's where we were lucky enough to win in 1992. I don't think that'll count for anything, incidentally. But you asked the question, Will. I'm taking a little bit longer to answer than I should, perhaps. We don't really know. We just think everybody's talking. This championship is absolutely wide open. There's 5 or 6 teams that could win it. But right now, based on performance, I mean, are Derry good enough to win it? I'm not quite sure. Will Armagh beat Derry in an ultra final? They could, they might, they will. I don't know. They have looked at times under performances in games you'd expect them to win. Dublin now are in that space. I just think maybe Kerry might be a little bit different. And with that ranking that I have worked out in my own head, in my opinion, Dublin are 1, Kerry 2. After Sunday, Kerry could be number 1 and Dublin number 2. So in the ranking as to who might win an All-Ireland title. But Kerry, I just think they have too much experience, too much guile, too much know-how. And they have, the couple of big name players, the Sean O'Shea's, the Cliffords. If they have the appetite, and we saw maybe Shane Walsh underperforming to a certain extent for Galway this year, arguably player of the year last year, or right up there with the very, very best. He hasn't hit the sweet spot for Galway yet, but I suspect he will when the pressure is at his greatest. The same might apply to Kerry. Get through Sunday if they do, get into the pool stages. The right thing about the pool stages is they don't have to come out of number 1. This is quite bizarre. I mean, Mayo, we're just chatting with a few friends of mine, colleagues, about it today and yesterday. I mean, Mayo might only have to win a single game in the pool, lose to Kerry, beat Louth, and lose to Cork, and still qualify as a third-ranked player in the group and get into that preliminary quarter-final. It's rather bizarre the way this whole thing is set up now that we fully understand and realise what the consequences of our winning or losing. So would Galway be better off, incidentally, I'm moving a little bit off topic here, would Galway be better off losing to Sligo in a provincial title on Sunday and getting an easier pool qualifying system? The reality is they're winners. They're playing, I think, Armagh and Tyrone and Westmeath. Losers, one would perceive that they might have an easier route to get into a quarter-final. So there's a lot of permutations, and I think there's a couple of teams I won't say playing funny games. They're just trying to get their training load right and play at their best when it matters most.
Neil, it is one of those quirks I wondered about, which was the draw happening this week for the All-Ireland Series and for the Tarleton. What about doing the Tarleton Draw? Because that starts a week earlier than the All-Ireland Senior Championship. But to have a situation where teams can know the consequences of winning or losing their final as to who they play in the group stages, to me seems a bit bizarre.
Yeah, and listen, you can see the reasoning behind it in terms of logistics, even teams in terms of traveling, try and arrange a lot of that in advance. What it has done is it's been perfect for managers to create a siege mentality, because you're left with a lot of people presuming who the winners will be in certain provinces, maybe all of the provinces, and it's given a lot of fodder to managers to talk about being written off. And we've seen John Kiley try to use that one with the Limerick Hurlers the week before last. It didn't work last weekend, but yeah, a lot of people have been teed up to be insulted on the back of the draw. Listen, it's a difficult one. It's not ideal to have groups drawn, and we don't actually know what the makeup of the groups will be. 50% of the teams in them aren't confirmed. And probably that's even exasperated by the teams that have reached provincial finals this year, where you're probably looking at the Ulster final, where it's the only one where it's a Division 1 team and a Division 2 team. And I know Clare would have been Division 2 this year, but you can take it there, maybe Division 3 on the back of a relegation. So, it's you throw the groups, people want to talk about the groups. To talk about the groups, you have to make presumptions. So yeah, it is a little strange, but I don't for a second think that there's any county or any manager or any group of players that are going to be looking at a potential group and saying, okay, let's throw our hat at this provincial final. The provinces get a hard time, but I think for the players, definitely they want to win one. Number two, they definitely do not want to lose. You look at any of those matchups and there's no team or none of the perceived bigger teams in those games want to lose to the perceived weaker teams. And then again, for the players, I think you can have all the A versus B games in training, and lads, stock will rise. They'll move up the ladder, maybe get themselves into the first 15, or maybe get themselves into a 26. But performances in championship games, no matter what the opposition or what the scoreline might be, carry a lot more stock than performances in A versus B games. And I just remember now, Dublin and Louth is actually another Division 1 versus Division 2 game. So, and it's probably one that will be really, really interesting as well, the form that Louth are in.
John, give us a manager's perspective here on something Neil has just said, which is perceived writing off of your team being used as a motivation. So you're Tony McEntee, Kieran McGeeney, Colin Collins at the moment, or Mickey Hart, the 4 teams who are considered the underdogs going into the finals over the next 2 weekends. Is that something the manager can actually use? Does that actually work on players if you say, do you know what, the media over there in Dublin have decided we're not going through?
Absolutely. We've told more lies in dressing rooms and stories concocted of what they read and what they heard. I've done that several times in order to try and inspire a team and get that little edge. There's so many tricks in the books, and I've read some fantastic stories about managers pulling off famous lies in dressing rooms where they concocted stories of what the media might have said. In fact, one famous manager who remained nameless, reading directly, quoting from a certain newspaper, a Sunday Independent, and he just was concocting words and making up the story as went along, what's total fabricated to inspire a certain player. But Will, the reality is there are some great stories told, and some great stories that will remain untold, unfortunately, as to what kind of trickery goes on in trying to inspire a team. But most managers are great liars.
There you go, Neil. Confirmation, if we ever needed it, that managers are more than happy to make up whatever narrative is required. I saw club.
I was wondering what story John was making up as he was reading that Sunday Independent.
Is that the mission, John, that the manager was yourself, which is what Neil's implying here?
Not quite, no, but anyway, you get the picture. I'm not fabricating what I said. There's actually factual evidence here that will substantiate what I've just said from a Sunday Independent article in particular. And if you do a small Google, you'll find out exactly what I'm talking about after the show.
I do think, though, from a player's perspective, that I'm not sure what power that has, among today's intercounty players in terms of motivating them. There's access to so much information online. They're seeing probably so much, maybe through social media, that probably has more of an impact on them because they're hearing it, a lot more repeatedly there. And I think the real impact that it can have is maybe in the people they meet around the county in the week running up to the game. People, every second person they say, talking about, oh, you've been written off, or such and such said that you have no chance, this type of thing. And players try to shut that out, but it has to creep in, and it can actually become draining trying to shut it out and to convince yourself you're not hearing it.
Yeah. One that I saw, and John will be familiar with Ballycommon with his last 3 years in Offaly, is that they won one of the Offaly Tier Championships last year, and what they brought into their dressing room, Neil, was a newspaper cutting of the power rankings of the start of the year, where it was said they had no chance of winning the title, and they had it on county final day stuck up in the dressing room.
I counteract that, Will. The team who came maybe second last in the power rankings and got knocked out of the championship earlier, bring the power rankings in as well.
I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and check it, but I thought it was interesting. The lads all had to get their picture with the newspaper cutting that was there. I think it's maybe squeezing whatever type of inspiration you can possibly get out.
Yeah, I think it's more a bit of crack when it falls in your favour than a motivation that's going to get you over the line.
I think so. I think that picture
I can't imagine Will or Neil, the great Joe Kernan with his Armagh team and winning his All-Ireland title, the half-time story, coming in and smashing his runners-up trophy off the floor, the dressing room wall, missing one or two players as he flung into the wall. I mean, I agree, Neil, managers are smarter, players are smarter now. As you say, the access that have to sports psychologists, etc., that might upset the trend or the mood in the dressing room because everybody has their own way and it's so professional now. I think Mayo they've doubled up on everything, and we've seen that with most of the big intercounty teams. There's so many resources, many of them with big egos, and certainly in some cases they mightn't necessarily like a manager tiptoeing into what would be perceived as their patch when it comes to the psychology and getting a team ready for action. But certainly the thing has changed. And some of that kind of stuff that I alluded to would not be mentioned in the dressing room today.
Very good. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, we'll be taking a look at the Connacht final between Galway and Sligo. Don't forget that our Gaelic football coverage here on Off the Ball is in partnership with AIB. They are the proud sponsors of the Senior Football Championship. Check out the hashtag #TheToughest for more. Welcome back. We're looking forward to Sunday's provincial Gaelic football finals. Before the break, we were taking a look at Munster between Kerry and Clare. The first provincial final of the year is at McHale Park on Sunday, where Galway seek a 49th Connacht title when they go up against Sligo. Sligo playing in the final for the first time since 2015. That was a day to forget, where they were beaten by Mayo 625 to 211. But they did beat Galway back in the 2007 decider. John Maughan and Neil Ewing are still with us. Neil, earlier on, John was buttering you up slightly by saying how well Sligo have been advancing under Tony McEntee, winning Division 4, the underage success starting to come to the boil now at this stage too. And this is Sligo back into a provincial final for the first time in 8 seasons, even being underdogs against Galway. This has been, I would say, a lot of the targets for this year have already been achieved by Sligo even before they take the pitch at the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for Sligo, the big target this year had to be getting out of Division 4. Probably disappointed not to have done it over the last 2 seasons, but really it was a necessity this year. And a necessity for the current group of players, but also a necessity for those under-20s that are coming behind them as well. I mentioned it earlier about, you become, I guess, accustomed to playing at a certain level, and we want those under-20s coming into the highest level of football possible. It might take them a little, even 1-2 games longer to find their feet, maybe in Division 3, hopefully Division 2 in time than it would in Division 4. But we're going to have, in 3-4 years' time, a much better standard player if we can start to move up through the division. So, yeah, absolutely. Division 4 promotion this year was absolutely critical. The way it fell with the Division 4 final being on, I guess just 7 days before the championship opener in London, probably meant that a Division 4 title wasn't crucial. It was definitely one, Tony McEntee would have swapped a win over London in the first round of the championship if he had to take defeat against Wicklow in that Croke Park final. The Croke Park final, it was a funny game. First half conditions were terrible. Wicklow looked considerably more impressive team in the first 15 minutes. But, what I liked about Sligo that day was that, some of their, what would be considered more attacking players, really knuckled down, got a few important turnovers. Sean Carwine turned over ball on the 45. Sligo got a score from it, brought them back into the game. Then Sligo got a goal just before half-time and teed them up to kick on, and they were a lot more impressive in the second half. I think they were a lot more impressive in the second half, and because of their conditioning. Maybe Oisin McConville in year 1 in Wicklow, a newish sort of squad, maybe in terms of their strength and conditioning, maybe just that 2 or 3 seasons behind where this group of Sligo players are. Probably around 2019, there was a big turnover of players in the Sligo squad, and there hadn't been, a turnover, anything like that in the previous few seasons. Sean Boyle has reluctant to give another Mayo man credit, but Sean Boyle from Mayo has come in there on the strength and conditioning side, and even through COVID, he was very diligent with that group of players. He invested a lot of his own time, nearly one-to-one management of some of those players, and you can really start to see that conditioning shine through at the minute against other Division 4 teams. That probably leads into one of the concerns they'd have for Sligo, is that we're on the back of a 9-game winning run, but you look at the makeup of the teams in that 9 games, and you're looking at London twice, New York, Wicklow twice, Carlow, Waterford, Wexford, Leitrim. So what Sligo have shown is that they're superior to Division 4 opposition. My worry is that Sligo get some, even I guess if it's subconsciously among the players, if they think that level is going to be good enough when they go into McHale Park on Sunday, or if management think that the game is going to Galway are going to allow them to play to that level and set up like they did against other Division 4 teams. So it's brilliant to be coming in on the back of that 9-game winning run, but it's also a possible danger given that we haven't been tested.
That is a difficulty, John, trying to bridge that gap from last summer being in a Tarleton Cup semi-final, playing in Division 4 this season, and then getting those 2 championship wins against London and New York. It's a big step up going from that quality to play against a proven entity in Galway who got to an All-Ireland final last year, who've been to a league final this season, who've beaten the Rossies and the Hyde to get to this final. That's a big gap to try and bridge.
There's no question about that, Will, but I mean, there's been an incremental improvement in Sligo from last year. I mean, every team going over to London from Connacht are always concerned. They had an emphatic victory. I mean, I was sweating bullets when we were playing in New York last year because of the unknown, the uncertainty. What are they going to be like? How will they travel? I mean, I couldn't have foreseen anything like the scoreline that they produced. A team that a week or two earlier had beaten Leitrim. I mean, that would suggest, they're on a rich vein of form. The confidence is sky high. This is, get up, lads, reckless abandon football, albeit keep it tight at the back and get into that through that first quarter intact, not conceding any goals is going to be critical for them. But I mean, I think they can afford to go up and throw caution to the wind and have a right go. If I was in charge of Sligo, I'd be saying, look, guys, I'd rather go up and play a level of entertainment and play a kind of a game that might be easy on the eye, that'll give a day out to Sligo supporters. Don't be afraid to lose. Go up and have a right go at it. Galway will treat Sligo with the utmost respect. Now, remember, Galway have lost a week. They went away to Portugal a week after the league final. They were flying out on the Monday morning. That week's preparation and their training camp in Portugal would have been focused on Mayo for a Connacht title tilt. That was the way everybody foresaw it a couple of weeks ago. Here they are. So as far as I'm concerned, psychologically, they've lost a week. So now they have to readjust, realign themselves, and now it's all about Sligo when they get into a Connacht final. They won't have the same kind of hurt. Mayo haven't beaten them in that league final. They won't have the same kind of hurt, and that rivalry that exists between Mayo and Galway won't be there on Sunday. And I genuinely feel that Sligo will take. We'll talk about Louth, one of the form teams of the year. Sligo could have beaten them, or Offaly could have beaten them last Sunday. I mean, they had 1 or 2 chances at the death. You could argue, well, if it would have been justified. But they hung in there, gave themselves an opportunity to get into a provincial final, and they were so unlucky. I mean, Sligo adopt the same philosophy. Let's go and have a right cut at this. And I don't expect Sligo to win. I'll be very honest with you, but I expect they will see and work on improving some of the processes that have been working on, that famous cliche that everybody talks about now, improving the processes and staying tight at the back, not conceding a big score, and really, justifying exactly where they are. Promotion Division 3, they're a quality team, and they're building on a lot of the confidence that's in Sligo football right now.
Neil, when it comes to this weekend, Darren O'Sullivan made the claim when we were chatting to him a couple of weeks ago that this Galway team have got the best front 6 forwards in the country. People debated that. Many felt that still there's more talent maybe in Kerry and Dublin. Others agreed that Galway have that talent. But you look particularly at Burke, Comer, Walsh as a potential inside forward line to try and stop this current weekend. That is a hell of a forward line that Galway can call upon for the weekend.
Yeah, and I couldn't disagree with what John. I couldn't disagree more with what John said there in terms of Sligo going down to Castlebar and playing with reckless abandon on Sunday. Personally, that's the last thing I want to see. Sligo, they don't need to be in the entertainment business. They need to be in the business of putting themselves in the best possible position to win a Connacht title. So for Sligo, reckless abandon isn't the way to go. And, you mentioned it there, Darren mentioned a few weeks ago, Galway do have an absolutely potent forward line. That full forward line is top class. You can split hairs over what team in the country has the best full forward line, but there's never going to be an accurate answer to that. But what Sligo need to do is, it comes in a number of different ways. They need to limit the supply of ball to those guys, and they need to get the matchups right on them as well. And the guys that are, I would hope, going to be there to help to double up and to cover some space, need to work to a level of, I guess, and this is where playing against teams at a higher level comes into it, work to a level of intelligence and game smarts that they haven't got to before, and to a physical output that they haven't got to before. And, a lot of that even comes down to concentration. You can afford to maybe switch off for 5 seconds in every 60 seconds in Division 4. You can maybe afford to switch off for 1 second in every 60 seconds when you're playing a Division 1 team. So are Sligo going to be ready for that? I think reckless abandon has to be forgotten about until maybe the last 10 minutes. You do what you can, stay in the game for the last 10 minutes. You bring it down to that. And then, Sligo do have some pace. They have quality attackers. Use that pace, use that skill in the full forward line and the full forward line in general in the last 10 minutes. And, hope that that's going to be enough to leave you in a position to get you over the line. You don't get over the line, this is worst case scenario. You've put in a performance that you can really, really take a lot from. And I think that's where this is different to other years. Sligo have 3 more games to come after this as well. What they want to come out of this Connacht final with is a Connacht title ideally, and if they don't, a platform to bring into those 3 games that are coming, within 2 weeks. Because what's happened even during my time with Sligo, we were probably on average a middle of Division 3 team. And, every year we go out and play a Division 1 team in Championship, and you might get beaten. Some years you might put up a better performance than others. But every year you learned an awful lot from that game against the Division 1 team. But the problem was you had to wait another 12 months to play another Division 1 team. And any of the things that you had learned, or, even those game intelligence things, getting to the pitch of the game had been lost because you had played another season at a lower level with 7 or 8 games against lesser opposition before that. So for Sligo, huge opportunity to go down to Castlebar, try and win a Connacht title, but also a huge opportunity to bring this group of players and this squad on with a guaranteed 4 more games this season against top quality opposition.
And Neil, just to give you the final word on this, what's your assessment of Galway being, given that you got to see them in Championship since we spoke last against the Rossies? What did you make of that performance, and how do you rate Galway now going into this weekend?
Yeah, they were very, very impressive against Roscommon. That's a Roscommon team that had beaten the league champions Mayo. And yes, Roscommon came back into it in the second half, but it just kind of felt a game where Galway had them at arm's length. And I think, that's from a Sligo perspective, I was hoping that Roscommon, could have got over the line against Galway, because I don't think Roscommon are as physically intimidating as Galway are. And I think, that might have allowed Sligo an even better chance of winning the Connacht title this weekend. But yeah, I think Galway, they have, some phenomenal athletes around the pitch. And, when you get to Croke Park later in the year, that's what's going to allow you to compete with Kerry, with Derry, with Dublin, is the level of athletes you have. If you can have all the skill in the world, but if you don't have that running power, that athleticism, you're not going to beat one of those top 3-4 teams and win in All-Ireland.
John, great to catch up again.
You too, Will.
And Neil, thanks a million for joining us as well. Enjoy the finals of the weekend, lads.
Thanks very much, Will. Thanks, John.
See you, Will.
Take care, guys.
Gaelic football on Off the Ball
with AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out #TheToughest for more.